Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Thompson,
And my name is Maya McCord.
and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. And so today we're going to be talking about one of the great mysteries of the world, and that is the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. So, McCord, have you heard about that one before?
Yes, I have. And I feel like anybody that's within just, mysteries and learning about mysteries and wanting to know like things that happen, with different things that happen, people know about this. Like 2014 was actually pretty recent. So a lot of people know about this flight and
About
should.
this flight, yeah. And it actually disappeared on March 8th. And we are still in March right now. And so Netflix literally just came out with a documentary on March 8th, to talk about this disappearance. And a lot of people were, shocked that it still wasn't solved. And it kind of brought it to the forefront of their minds because 2014 was a minute ago. And a lot of people now were young at that time.
Yeah.
Very, very young. And over 200 people disappeared in that flight.
Yeah.
Over 200 people. They had 13 crew members on there. And were you able to watch any of the documentary that Netflix put out?
I did get to watch the first episode fully. Just got to the second one that's called Hijacked, but I know within the first one, they did go a lot into detail. They talked a lot about some of the theories that they had going on about it. And they really gave a lot of evidence and a lot of information about what was going on, like around the time. And I mean, like about 16, 17 days from the time that the flight disappeared and how people were coping about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like the way that they made the documentary, it was very, very good. Like they literally started from before the flight even took off because it was a red-eye flight. It was leaving at about midnight. And then they literally went from events that happened before the flight, it was a regular, normal day. Nothing was out of the ordinary, until afterwards when they disappeared from the radar, the air traffic control. And, it was really hard for the families to see that because they were not given any answers for that.
It was really bad considering how, and all these families had a certain mindset going in because nobody was giving any info. And they had a lot of hope, but it was a lot of like, well, maybe not. And when they were put in that certain room of like, okay, what evidence do they have right now? What info can we get about our loved ones? They were given really nothing. And like within those past few days of like from the time and from like 16 days later, they still didn't have any info. It was crazy.
Exactly. And the prime minister in Malaysia at that time, he wasn't helping the people either. The people, their families, they were protesting because they wanted to know what happened. Like, this is not normal, an entire flight to disappear. Like, sure, planes crash, that happens, but for it to disappear and then still not to have been found is very eerie because so many people even went on their own personal quest to try to find the plane. Have you heard anything about that before?
Yeah, I have. I know within the documentary, I know they talked a lot about some of the guys and some of the girls doing a few doing something on Tomnod, like looking for plane parts. And it's crazy that you could still like find those little pieces or whatever, but finding like some of like the bigger parts, nobody could find about them. And even when people found that stuff, the government took no notice to it and still gave out considerably false evidence and false information because other people were finding this stuff, but none of it was being taken into consideration.
Right. A lot of the stuff in the documentary was hidden from the public. They didn't get this information until weeks, maybe even months later, that some pieces were found, and that could have gave the families hope in that certain time. And a lot of people blame the pilot of the flight. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I saw the theory of this was in the first episode. I saw the theory of them saying maybe it was the pilot, maybe it was like a suicidal, mass murder. And mostly I was thinking, okay, what would have been the reason, Like, what was the big reason for why he would have done this? Like, specifically, okay, I can understand maybe a suicidal aspect, but for putting it on the rest of the
Right.
rest of the attendees on there and the rest of people trying to get somewhere, like, what would be the point of it?
That was like one of the biggest things like about it, like the why aspect of it. Like, why did it happen? Like, what could have been his motive? Like, even his own like wife, like, and all his other colleagues were like, he was normal that day. He was normal just around the time of the airplane's disappearance. Nothing was out of ordinary. The only really thing that kind of connected like him to maybe it possibly being him is that he had a flight simulator in his home.
Yeah.
And it like had the route of like the path that the flight took. And a lot of people were wondering, like, was it actually him?
I mean, they did say earlier that the flight was pretty normal. It was a normal flight that they took. So, I mean, it's kind of weird. It really is very weird that happened, and the people that went into his home to actually look for this stuff, even though they seemed it was really normal. But, maybe it's a thing that some pilots have for knowing their, like, trying to memorize their routes, maybe.
Memorizing their routes. Yeah, and then even in the second episode of the documentary, I know you said you have yet to really watch it yet, they kind of touched on the theory of it possibly being hijackers, which normally people would probably think, that if a plane disappeared, they'd probably think somebody hijacked it, especially after 9/11. Like,
oh, yeah.
This was in 2014, 13 years after that. Americans were probably thinking hijackers, and just the way that they talked about it in the documentary, it was kind of like, well, there was these Russian people on the plane, and they kind of took over the cockpit and kind of said to the pilots that if you don't basically like crash this plane at a certain time, like, we're gonna hurt you or something. Like, it was very different. I hadn't heard of that one before. What do you think about that theory?
Once again, recently, what I had watched in the first episode, they talked about having a connection between Malaysian 370 and between Malaysian flight 117,
right?
Like that it got shot down by something, and even former President Barack Obama talked about it when it happened. So I feel like that connection could vary, considering that they talked about not having, like, Malaysia hadn't had any problem with flights before that flight went missing, and within the 4 months of it happening, that happened, and Malaysia 117 got shot down. So it's crazy.
Like, that doesn't normally happen to an airline, like, let alone a country, that two airplanes, one goes missing, the other one gets shot down with everybody basically dying in there. Like, it was just, like, Malaysia was kind of really under hot water then. Getting, emails from the press, the families pressing them, other countries pressing them. It was just kind of, a lot of things were going bad for Malaysia at that time, and it just kept getting worse, because even in the third episode, they were talking about how there was this secret cargo that was put on the plane, underneath the plane. Yeah, that's what they were talking about. It was kind of one of the more theories that, I mean, none of them to me really it was really a stretch. All of them seemed like it was really a stretch. They were really trying to, find something. That happens a lot when you're
grasp
when
for
you're
straws.
trying to solve things. That happens a lot with like criminal investigations. When you're trying to solve things, is literally they just grasp at straws, and that's how people get falsely accused, when people are just getting so much pressure from the media to to do it. So what do you think about, do you think they will ever find that plane?
I mean, it's been a while. Personally, I feel like getting a lot of evidence from online and a lot of people looking for their own stuff, I feel like we've gotten a lot of evidence from there, and people can take initiative and look for that and like think about it. So, just getting it from the internet and looking at other people that do it can kind of help, other than just having the government look for stuff and just putting all your eggs in that one basket.
Right, exactly. So thank you all for watching today, and tune in for our next topic, next mystery, next time we come here on the Forgotten Podcast. I'm Maya Thompson.
I'm Maya McCord.
Good night.